They blocked her at the edge of the cemetery, right where the polished booth stopped and the gravel path began. Black coats, crisp salutes, a wall of uniforms and procedure. Someone whispered, "Family only." Someone else said, "She's not on the list." And just like that, the woman who had crossed deserts and oceans for the man in the coffin was told she didn't belong at his funeral. Rain pressed down in a thin, steady curtain, turning the flags into heavy colors and the air into something that tasted like metal. The casket waited 10 paces ahead, draped in stars and stripes, surrounded by men who stood straighter than grief should allow. The band held their instruments in silence. The chaplain watched his watch. Time, it seemed, had become more important than truth. Her name was Mara Ellison, and she stood with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles went white. She wore no uniform, just a plain black dress and shoes worn thin at the heels. Her hair was pulled back, not for elegance, but because habits from another life died hard. On the inside pocket of her coat was a folded letter, creased until it felt soft as cloth. She hadn't planned to show it to anyone. She had planned to stand quietly, say goodbye, and disappear again, the way she always had. "Ma'am, you'll need to step back," the young lieutenant said, not unkindly. He was barely old enough to shave without help, his voice practiced, his eyes sliding away from hers. "We're about to begin. I just want to stand there," Mara said, pointing toward the casket. Her voice was steady, though her chest felt like it was caving in. "I won't interfere." "I'm sorry," the lieutenant replied. "Orders, orders." The word struck her harder than the rain. Orders had taken Ethan Cole away from her a dozen times. Orders had brought him back with scars he never talked about. Orders had ridden the space between their lives, wide enough to hide a war. She took a step back, because that was what you did when orders came. She had learned that early. But as she moved, a murmur rippled through the assembled ranks. Heads turned, a colonel frowned, a sergeant whispered something sharp. Somewhere behind the casket, a tall figure paused mid-step. The 4-star general had arrived without fanfare, as he preferred. General Robert Harlan was a legend whose name carried weight in rooms where maps decided lives. He had known Ethan Cole professionally, as a name on reports, as a silhouette on screens, as a man who did impossible things and never asked for recognition. He had not expected to find disorder at the funeral. "What's going on?" Harlan asked quietly. The lieutenant stiffened. "Sir, there's a civilian attempting to approach the family area." Harlan's eyes moved to Mara. He saw the way she stood, balanced despite the rain, as if the ground itself had been measured and memorized. He saw the grief there, yes, but also something else. Familiar, controlled, dangerous, even, in its restraint. "Ma'am," Harlan said, stepping closer. "May I ask your name?" "Mara Ellison," she replied. She didn't salute. She didn't curtsy. She met his gaze like someone used to looking straight at storms. "In your relationship to Sergeant First Class Cole?" The question cracked something open inside her. Memories rushed in uninvited. Ethan laughing in a kitchen at dawn, whispering plans they never quite made. Ethan bleeding in her arms under a moon that didn't care. Ethan handing her the letter she now carried, telling her to keep it safe, telling her to stay invisible. "I was his partner," Mara said simply. In the field, a ripple of confusion moved through the ranks. Partner meant many things, and none of them fit the picture in front of them. Harlan studied her more closely now. The shoes worn thin, the posture, the eyes that had seen too much and learned to keep it quiet. "His unit?" Harlan asked. Mara hesitated. Ethan had made her promise. No names, no details, no shadows dragged into light. But this was his funeral, and they were blocking her from it. "Before he was reassigned," she said, choosing each word carefully, "we served together on a joint task force." Off the books. Harlan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He knew those words, knew the units that didn't exist, the missions that vanished into redacted pages. He also knew that those people rarely showed up at funerals. They grieved alone. They survived by being forgotten. "Do you have proof?" a colonel asked, impatience edging his tone. Mara reached into her coat and pulled out the letter. The paper trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what it carried. She handed it to Harlan without ceremony. He unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable. Ethan Cole's, firm and precise, the kind that didn't waste ink. Harlan read the first line, then the second. By the third, the rain seemed to fall quieter. "Sir, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. The woman standing in front of you saved my life more times than I can count. She stood where no one else could. She carried what I couldn't. If anyone has earned the right to stand at my side today, it's her. Harlan closed the letter. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the general did something no one expected. He turned, raised his hand, and the entire ceremony stopped. "Hold," he said. The band froze. The honor guard lowered their rifles. The chaplain looked up, startled. Hundreds of eyes followed Harlan as he faced the ranks. "This woman," he said, his voice carrying easily through the rain, "is not a disruption. She is not a civilian spectator. She is part of this soldier's story, whether it appears in your files or not." He turned back to Mara. "Would you walk with me?" Her breath caught. She nodded once, trusting him the way she had trusted Ethan, the way you trusted someone only when there was no other choice. They walked together toward the casket, boots and worn heels crunching in unison on the gravel. As they passed, whispers turned to silence. Some faces showed confusion, others showed dawning recognition. A few older soldiers straightened in a way that said they understood exactly who she was, even if they didn't know her name. They stopped beside the casket. The flag stirred in the rain. Mara reached out, her fingers brushing the cloth, and for a moment the world narrowed to that single touch. She thought of the night Ethan had told her he was done. That he wanted something quieter. That he wanted to live. She thought of the morning he hadn't come back. "I'm sorry," Harlan said softly, so only she could hear. "So am I," Mara replied. And then, because honesty mattered now more than silence, she added, "He was brave. But he was tired." Harlan nodded. "They all are." He turned to the assembled ranks again. "We honor sacrifice," he said. "But we often forget the people who make that sacrifice possible. The ones who stand in the dark so others can stand in the light." He gestured to Mara. "Today, we remember all of it." The ceremony resumed, slower now, heavier with meaning. The words of farewell carried deeper. When the rifles fired their salute, Mara didn't flinch. When the bugle played taps, the sound cut clean and true, and she let the tears come at last, quiet and unashamed. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed and the rain eased, a young soldier approached her. "Ma'am," he said, uncertain but respectful, "I'm sorry we stopped you." Mara shook her head. "You were doing your job." He hesitated. "Thank you," he said finally. "For whatever it was you did." She almost smiled. "You're welcome." Harlan watched her go, her figure growing smaller as she walked away alone. He tucked the letter into his coat, knowing it would find its way into a file few would ever see. The ceremony had ended, but something else had begun. That day, the rules bent, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to hold the truth. A woman they tried to block was finally seen. A soldier was honored in full, not in fragments. And those who witnessed it carried the lesson with them, that courage doesn't always wear a uniform, that loyalty doesn't always make the list, and that sometimes, the most powerful salute is simply making room for the truth to stand.